Hi everyone! Happy almost Friday. I hope that you're doing well, and I am back again with a live video. Today I'm going to talk about why the terms silver tsunami and seniors drive me crazy. And I want to let you know that you want to watch this live just because it will help you advocate for your parents, who I'm guessing are seniors, and also in the future, advocate for yourself when you do get old, because we are all going to get old, guys. And then the second thing is really, keeping in mind this information to help fight the stigma of aging. So, just to give you a little lowdown on the stigma of aging, you may think, oh, there's no stigma about it, or it's very small. Well, let me tell you that ageism is really big here in the US. And the main reason is because, of course, the older people get, the closer that they get to death. And no one wants to think about death, which is completely understandable. But you see these companies showing up, like the beauty companies that are, cutting down on coming up with products to decrease the look of wrinkles. And also, I was just at a giant supermarket today and looking at the greeting cards, and you see, the words over the hill, things like that. So we definitely do have an issue with ageism in our country. And an example of this, which is fairly recent, if you've seen the news, there's this thing called the silver tsunami, which I feel like is very much of an exaggeration, not in the sense that, our population is getting older, but in the choice of words. And so I understand that, perhaps the media and news sources pick these terms to really get a lot of clicks. And I think that there is a risk in this term in the sense that it really does, tsunami and all of the strange things going on with our weather this year, which is like a total another conversation for another live video. But, it really invokes fear in people's hearts, and it just makes me think of like, silver tsunami, help, which I don't think is really the image that we want in Americans' heads, considering there already is ageism existing. So what I will say is, I'm sure you all know that our aging population is getting older, and so I do think it's important to address these biases that we may have, and ideally, it would be a lot easier for seniors to live in our community and in our country if we stop having these, terms that we use. So that being said, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the word seniors. So seniors is a pretty accepted term, as is older adults, in the dementia care and elder care industry, as is, in the general population as well, what with Medicare and Medicaid, referring to people after retirement as seniors. But, again, with the use of this term in the public sphere, senior makes me think of, the word senile, which definitely has a negative connotation. And, the idea of a senior moment, which I know that some, elders talk about as, oh, I just had a senior moment. But again, I think that hits again on the word senile, which now, we understand that to probably be referring to people with dementia. So I have, in my company, referred to the word senior instead as elder. And so if you think about other countries, Asian countries I have in mind, because my husband is Chinese American, there is so much more respect for their older population in that country, so much more than the US. And the other thing is, when you were studying in school, for example, Native Americans, right? They were here first before we were, and there was a lot more respect for the elders in the community. I mean, think about it. They were the ones that had the most wisdom, of course, because of the life experience, but they had gone through, so many challenges that now the younger people people have been going through. And that's why they were respecting these elders in their community. And I wonder, why can't the US be like that too? We really have a long way to go. And I think the first step here is referring to seniors as elders. And so that is why I have decided to do that in my company. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about my logo for my company. So you may look down below here, but my company is called Befriended Heart, Discover Joy in Dementia. And so you'll see that there's, a pink heart logo, and there's a squiggle in the middle. And so this speaks again to the stigma, not just for elders, but also people with dementia. So when I was first looking for a logo for my company on Google, I just saw, the very common image is puzzle pieces and lots of puzzle pieces missing, or, a big question mark above the person's head. And I just felt like that was so demeaning, and it's not really respecting the fact that this person has been on earth for, however many years and is very knowledgeable and wise because they are an elder. So I ended up creating with my friend, also a designer, the idea of this squiggle in the middle. And the squiggle really speaks to the protein. So if you've done research on dementia, they're finding a link between the evidence of proteins, extra proteins in the brain, and tangles. And these tangles are sort of look like lots of stars or lines or something like that. And so the squiggle to me represents those proteins. It's nothing missing in the person's brain. It is an addition to their brain. And also the heart around that squiggle signifies us meeting the person with dementia where they are and loving them anyway. I think it's so huge that we still respect the person with dementia. We still love them just as much as we did, but we take the understanding of the fact that, they have these extra proteins in their brain and they are no longer thinking the same way or reacting the same way. I think it's really important to keep that in mind. So if you like what you heard here today, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel. I also have a website, www.joyindementia.com. And if you have any thoughts or comments on this video, I'd love if you could leave them below, and I'm always looking for new topics. So thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Bye.